started back in 1995 as a business, and this is actually where he gave his first speech or occasional talk. Back in 1995, but I wasn't born yet. I was born in 2000, and he still had his business going, and all throughout my whole life, I grew up around reptiles. I think it says in the paper that some of my earliest memories are of riding sulcata tortoises in our backyard at the age like of 3 or 4. And it's like a really boring pony ride as a kid, but I had nobody to play with. But I look back on it and like I really enjoy those memories of having those animals in my yard. And then about 2009, 2012, my dad got out of it for a little bit. And then in 2012, we started to get back into it. And he asked me if I wanted to breed any reptiles. And I told him yes, that we started breeding ball python when I was only 12 at the time. And then I grew up sort of like in the business, more to say, than just around the animals. So I started to learn more business things. And when I graduated high school, I graduated in 2018. In 2019, I took over ownership. Because I do a large portion of the work. I do everything that involves online sales, shipping, morph market. We have a TikTok page, an Instagram, a Facebook page. And TikTok is probably, I know there's a bunch of controversy going on with TikTok right now and everything, but TikTok probably has been one of our most successful platforms that we've been on. We've been able to reach our large apps and social media platforms that I have noticed that we have gained customers from. So that's really cool part. But mainly what we do is we breed, obviously, the reptiles, but we breed primarily ball pythons, court snakes, and sand boas. Those are the ones that we mainly focus on. And I did bring some in here to show with you today, to show you what I do and what the different morphs that we are working with. So I know when my dad got started, he only did chameleons, but we ended up getting out of chameleons a few years back just because of the work that goes on with the chameleon. Is obviously a lot more than, say, a ball python. And we did work a lot with leopard geckos at one point. I think we had probably about 300 female leopard geckos. And we would go through the eggs probably every other day, and it took about 2 hours just to look for eggs. And we produced, about 3,000 baby leopard geckos. And we ended up getting out of them not because they weren't good sellers or not because they just were not like a good business investment, but because of the workload that came with them was just much higher for 100 leopard geckos than it was for 100 snakes. So that's why we made the decision to get out of them, and we started replacing them with sand boas. Sand boas are one of the first things that I started to do on my own. Me and my dad did more pythons together. He is more knowledgeable in the colubrid section, although I'm still learning a lot about the colubrids, such as king snakes and corn snakes and milk snakes. But the sand boas were one of the ones that I decided that I wanted to do myself. Now, of course, I work with your basics, your normals, your albinos, your andaries, and things like that. But we do have some other ones. So this is a paint sand boa, and I think he was about $500, but the paint is a recessive gene. And what it is it creates a larger stripe that goes down the center of their back. Now there are striped sand boas, but it's usually just a smaller stripe. With the with the paint sand boas, it creates a wider stripe, and it's a recessive gene. So I don't have any females to go with him, but he's just about to be big enough to breed. So I'm testing him out to see if he will breed with some of my females, but he hasn't shown any interest yet. So that way I can produce my own pets. Another one we work with is the albino paradox. So there's a difference between like regular albino and albino paradox. The albino paradox and albinos are not compatible, so if you try to bring them together, you will not produce any visual albinos. You'll just get a bunch of normals that are double het for albino and albino paradox. And what the paradox does is it adds little black specks all over them. That is the paradox. It's also, I believe, one of the only known genetic paradox that there is. There is paradox in ball pythons, but it's not genetic. And I think they are proving out that the paradox in bearded dragons is genetic too, but I'm not 100% sure of that. But if you can see all the little dots on her, the dark spots, those are the paradox spots. Now some are high, some are low. This girl is a very high expression. Most of the ones that I've produced in the past have just had like maybe 1 or 2 spots, but she's one of my more high expression girls. One thing I have noticed about sand boas, if you do want to breed them, they take a very long time to grow up, or not a very long time, but a longer time than usual to grow up. My females need to be at minimum 3 years old to even start to breed. The males can breed relatively early, within a year or so, but my females, I don't breed them any earlier than 3 years because they're just too small and don't do well with breeding. My largest litter, or I should say my average litter for the sand boas is anywhere from 12 to 20, but my largest litter I've ever gotten was from a female. She was probably about 10 years old. She had 42 babies, which I was not expecting. Now, half of them were not alive. They were stillborn, but the other half were still alive. So it was completely unexpected.
Were those live birth?
Yeah, they are live birth. So the boas will give live birth and the pythons lay eggs. And even for being such a small snake, they still give a very reasonable amount of babies. So I like them. I like them because they don't get too big. If you want a boa, usually when you think of boa, you think of like this huge snake, and these guys, they stay relatively small. You can keep them in a 20-gallon pool like usually.
Don't they hide them most of the time?
Yeah, they're not good display animals. They'll spend most of their time under the substrate, so they're not the best display animals, unfortunately, but they're still very cool. And so those are one of the things that I started breeding myself, that I first got into. Another one I did start breeding earlier on were African fat tails. We did the leopard geckos, but I also got into the African fat tails. What I didn't realize is they're a little bit trickier to breed. I have found that with the African fat tails, females you can get up to breeding within a year, just like leopard geckos, but they aren't really good for breeding past 5 years. And I noticed that with any of my girls that were over 4 or 5 years, they stopped laying eggs completely. So most of them, I had to breed within their first few years, and then after that sell them and hold babies back. So it was almost as if every year I wasn't selling babies, I was selling adults, because I had to keep babies back every year for myself in order to still reproduce them. So I ended up getting rid of them, I think before, or selling them before the leopard geckos, just because of the more difficulty there was for breeding. Now, the other ones we work with, which my dad has a little bit more knowledge on, are the corn snakes. And the corn snakes are really cool. I was not into them at first. I was really into like the ball pythons and the sand boas, but over the past year, I've gained more of an interest in them. So they're starting to pique my interest a little bit. This is a palmetto corn snake. We got this guy, I would say about 5 years ago, and this is a full-grown male. He's actually one of the larger ones that we have, but it's another recessive gene that we work with, and I really like the palmettos. One thing I don't really like about the palmettos is it seems that the babies are just not as strong as, say, like a regular corn snake is. So when I have baby corn snakes, they need to have 3 consecutive meals in a row before I feel comfortable selling them. With the palmettos, they need to have 5 or 6 consecutive meals before I'm comfortable even selling them, because it just seems they're a little bit trickier to get started as far as eating and things like that. But this is our male. We do have a few females. Yeah, we have a few females that are growing up. I think this will be their first year producing. But we have some albinos, so they're all white with the red specks. And then we also have, I know we have creamsicles that are growing up right now that are 100% het for the palmetto. So they'll be all white with the orange specks and the red eyes. And I know there's one other person trying to make the creamsicle palmettos. So I guess we're just like in a race to see who does it first. But those are one of my favorite ones. And
that's beautiful.
How much did we pay for him? I think we paid right around $1,000 for him. But this was like when they were closer to like being newer to the public. So we paid a pretty penny for him, but he's been a good breeder for us. Another one of the favorite ones that we have that we work with is the scaleless palmettos. I mean, it's not scaleless palmettos, scaleless corn snakes. Now this is a recessive gene, just like the palmetto is a recessive gene. And what it does is it removes the scales. Now they still have belly scales. That is what helps them crawl around. But what the scaleless gene will do is remove any of the scales on top, and what it does is really sharpens the pattern. I have a female I really wanted to bring in. She's just a normal scaleless. This is an anery scaleless, so the anithuristic black and white version. She's just a normal scaleless, so she has lots of orange, but she has this incredible stripe down the center. When I picked her up to bring her in today, I realized she was full of eggs. So I didn't want to bring her in. So instead I brought her boyfriend.
She was what?
She was full of eggs.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
So I figured I wouldn't stress her out and bring her in today, but she's super gorgeous for just being a normal version of a scaleless. She's very, very pretty. This is another one of the morphs that we work with. Yeah. I really like these. We have the albino versions too, and we have little babies right now, so they're not very big, but I mean, we have one that's super, super intense in its orange colorations.
That's what the thing with corn snake, there's so many variations.
Yeah, I didn't know that, and that's why I wasn't really into them, even though we have, 2 sheds full of them. I don't really spend a whole lot of time out in the sheds doing a lot of the breeding with the colubrids. What I mainly do is I work with all of the hatchlings. So my dad does a lot of the breeding, although this year I took over a lot of the breeding with the ball pythons. But he handles a lot of the breeding, and then once they hatch out, I take on all 1,500 plus babies that we produce in a year. So all the baby corn snakes and the baby ball pythons, and anything else that we have, or baby sand boas. And the next one, which is what helped us gain a lot of following on our social media, is a corn snake, and it is what's called a pink coral snow. So it's a pink corn snake. And I made a video, I call it an order packing video. I actually got the idea from another person on there. Her name was like Hennis Crystals, and she has a company where she sells crystals and rocks and gemstones. And she got popular from filming, packing people's orders that ordered with her. So I decided to take the idea and do that with snakes, because I know a lot of people don't know you can even ship snakes in the US. So I took that idea, and I had a customer that had ordered 7 pink corn snake babies. So what I did is I just showed the process, the box, how it's insulated, the heat packs that we use, the ice packs that we use, and showed the actual baby snakes. And that video got, I think, about 250,000 views on TikTok. And that week I sold out of every single pink corn snake that I had.
Oh, wow.
So I'm very thankful for that. And this is one of the Tessera pink coral snows. This is one of my males.
Oh, that's pretty.
Yeah. I have another one at home called a cotton candy. Now he doesn't have the stripe on him. He has more of the typical normal pattern with the bands and the circles. But they are a anithuristic albino, and they also have what's called the red factor gene in them, which gives them that pink coloration. Now some are pinker than others. This is the pinkest one that we have right now. He is very pretty boy, and when they hatch out, a lot of the times they look white, but they'll gain pink over time. Now some hatch out nicer than others, or pinker than others.
How old is that one?
He's 2 years old right now.
2 years old. How big do they get?
Probably about as big as the palmetto right there, between 3 and 4 foot. So they're not too terribly large. That's what, he's a little bit smaller than the other two because he's a little bit younger. But they'll gain pink as they get older. So a lot of times when people come up to me at the shows, they'll say they want a pink snake because they saw the video or they've seen them before. And I show them, they don't want to get it because it's white, and I have to let them know that they develop the pink as they get older. So each shed you're going to see more pink start to develop. And these are probably my favorite corn snakes that we have. If not, it's a close second between this and the palmetto. But we have pink coral snows, we have the salmons, I think they're called, and then we have the cotton candies, and the cotton candies will be our first year producing. They look similar to this, but they do have more of a lighter pink tone to them, as where this is like a more of an intense pink to them. These are horns. Now, I think the first ball python that I got when I was 12 that I wanted to use for breeding was a female pastel. And we got her at the Daytona NRVE. And no, it was just, oh yeah, this one is a pied. But our first one was a pastel, and I think we paid like maybe 40 or 50 bucks for her, I don't remember, but I remember my dad asked me which one I wanted. And there was one really, really yellow one, and there was one that we would typically call a little bit more muddy. Just has more brown in it or black in it. And I like the darker one, and my dad liked the lighter one, and of course, it was my snake, but I didn't get to choose. So we got the lighter one. Well,
I remember when they would go for $10,000 a snake.
yeah, my dad, when he got his first ever pastel, it was a male pastel in the early 2000s, he paid $2,000 for it. Grew it up to breeding size and it died. So he never even got to breed it.
Who did you get from Bob Clark? But he was the one that...
He might have, yeah. Yeah, when I was younger, I remember we had a section. It was just maybe 2 or 3 racks full of ball python. But he didn't work a lot with the ball pythons at the time. He primarily had just the horn snakes, but I remember he had mandarin rat snakes too. Those are some of my favorite. We actually just got in a mandarin rat snake.
They're pretty.
Yeah, I think 3 or 4 days ago, because we have 2 subadult females, no males, so we just ended up picking up a male. But with the ball pythons, this is where I have a little bit more fun with it because I enjoy them. And I know when you go to a show, you primarily see ball pythons now. They've really flooded the market with ball pythons, so almost every single table you go up to is going to have a ball python on it. But I think one of the main reasons for that is because there's still such a demand for ball pythons. My corn snakes were my best seller up to about 4 or 5 months ago. My corn snakes were like neck and neck, and then my ball pythons now are just a little bit better of a seller. And again, we sell at the North Market, but our #1 sellers at the shows are ball pythons. And believe it or not, like I rarely sell corn snakes at the shows. I would be lucky if I sell 5 in a weekend, but I can sell over 20 ball pythons in a weekend at a show.
How much do they go for?
The corn snakes?
The ball pythons.
I would say our average price that we sell is going to be about $150 to $200. It's like an average price that people probably spend if they're just buying for a pet. Now, I've gone and sold them for 500 plus, but it's usually somebody looking more for like a specialty snake.
Right.
We do boa constrictors too, but on a very small scale. We actually had a show last month, and we sold a female boa constrictor, a baby, for about $2,000.
Wow.
That was very nice.
Oh, wow.
Very nice surprise. It was to the vendors that were right next to us. But this here is what's called an ultramel pied. So the pied is what creates the white markings on her, and then the ultramel is the color here on top, this more orangey color. And we got into the ultramels, I want to say maybe 8 years ago. We got our ultramels for a very good price because nobody wanted them. You could not sell ultramels for anything. It just seemed like people were really not interested. And then I want to say about 2 years ago is when all of a sudden people changed their minds, all they wanted were ultramels. And luckily we had them at the time. So one of the first things we started to do was put ultramel into our pies. We had a male ultramel and a female pie, and we bred them together. And what that produced us was a clutch full of normal babies, but they were then double het for the ultramel pie. So we kept those babies back for about 2 years until the females were big enough to breed, maybe 2.5 years. The first year we put them together, we did not get any visual ultramel pies. What we ended up producing was pies, so just the normal pies or just normal ultramels. And then we tried again a year later, and we ended up producing the visual ultramel pies. And we actually hit 2 in one clutch, and it was a male and female. So I was super glad about that. The male is about the same size as this girl here. This is a sister. He's actually breeding because males can typically breed smaller than females can. And this is the girl here, but she's getting up to size right now. She's not big enough to breed yet. We typically start breeding them, I would say about 1,300 grams is when we start to say, okay, she's getting up to size. We're going to go ahead and pick a male out for her. I know a lot of people do it at 15. 1,500 grams.
3 years old, right? You said?
Between 2 and 3 years old, yeah. If you feed them enough, you can get them up in 2 years. Now the males, they can breed within a year. Really, they can breed at 400 grams. It's just a matter of them actually knowing what to do at 400 grams. I have a male at 600 grams right now. Put him in with a female probably for the past 3 months, and he has not been interested. And I just got a male last week that was just at 400 grams, put him in with a female, and he bred right away. So I think the age has a little bit more to do with the males than weight, even though at 400 grams they can produce sperm and they can breed. So this was an exciting project for us. We do have some other exciting projects. We just started working with what's called a lace gene. Now, if anybody watches, he has a YouTube channel, Canova Reptiles or Canova Ball Pythons. He has a large following on YouTube, but he actually just did a video about lace ball pythons and what it's a newer gene. And it's actually a co-dominant gene, so you can breed it to a lace to a normal, and first generations produce the lace form. And then if you breed it together, you get what's called a white lace, which is the super form of it. So we had just gotten a female before he posted that video, and we had no idea like anything about the lace gene. Right after he posted that video, a lot of people started looking to get lace ball pythons because he's more of what, I don't want to say trendy, but he's sort of what sets the trends in the ball pythons when he posts a certain video about projects he's excited about. So we got some lace ball pythons. Male is the one that I just got in. He's already breeding, so I may produce them this season, this year. Other ones are going to be probably about a year, 2 years down the road before we're producing any. Other ones that we work with VPI xanthics, your black and white ones. We work with candy albino. We work with regular albino. We work with, what else do we work with? We work with so much. We work with the pies. We work with lavender albinos. We work with an array of the ball pythons. But this was one I was really proud to produce, and she actually looks a lot better than her brother. He has very little color on him. He's primarily white with just some orange spots, but she has a good amount of orange on her, which is why I like her.
Ball pythons, like the only snake you just sat on the table for a while.
When people come up to the shows, a lot of people that we sell to are parents that are bringing their kids. They have like a 10-year-old or something. Their kid's been begging them for a snake and they don't know what to do, like what snake to get. I recommend them a ball python or a corn snake. And the reason why I recommend ball pythons first over corn snake is not because they're easier care-wise. They're actually, I would say, about the same, but they're easier handling-wise. Corn snake, they're not aggressive, but they like to move around. Ball python, I call them a living pet rock. So I think that's why at shows they're so much better of a seller than say like a corn snake is. And I also think we were flooded for so long with corn snakes in the market. And plus it's a native species down here. I don't think a lot of people down here are as interested in the corn snakes. Now up north, I actually charge more for my corn snakes on North Market, or most of my animals on North Market, because people up north are willing to pay more. People in Wyoming who don't have any reptile shows or don't have any native corn snake species or snake species up there, they're willing to pay more to get the animal that they want. So the corn snake I sell more of online than I do at the shows by a lot.
When you ship it, what does it just take overnight?
Yeah, I use FedEx Priority Overnight Shipping. Used to be like really good, like the price. I used to be able to ship all the way to California for like 45 bucks. That's not the case anymore. It's like $80 overnight now. But I've been able to give most of my customers a little bit of a break because I earned a discount with the shipping company that I use. So I've been able to keep it under $60, 60 or under. So luckily with that discount, I've been able to keep their shipping rates lower. Now we don't charge for the box. We don't charge like for ice packs or heat packs, so there's a little bit of money there. The only thing I charge for is a cryo pack, which is like more expensive, like fancy heat pack / ice pack in one. They're about $7 each. So I do offer them at an additional cost, but most of the time we're just like regular ice packs or heat packs in them. Now that it's been warming up, I really haven't having to been using that many as I was before. Some of the other ones that I brought in, this was another one, kind of has like the same story as the Ultramel pie. We had to take two normal double heads and put them together. And what this is a candy albino pie. So with this guy, Candy is another form of albino, and it's actually compatible with the regular albino gene. So you can breed a Candy and albino together and get what's called a Candino. They're probably a little bit more popular than the candies are, because I don't think a lot of people really know what the candies are yet. But this was the same situation as the Ultramel pie, and he was the only one that we produced in there that was a visual candy pie. and I really like him. That's probably my dad's favorite one that we produced all last season. And then over here, we have, this was one that we didn't produce. We actually ended up picking this guy up, and whenever I post this one online, tons of messages if he's available. I was going to sell him at one point, but then decided to keep him back almost immediately. And this is what I call a powerhouse male. Typically when I buy males, I want them to have as many genes as possible, and I spend the most money on my males. That way I can buy single gene or 2 gene females that are usually at a cheaper cost. So this guy here is a bamboo leopard pastel spark. So the bamboo is really what gives them that sort of like gray color, and the leopard is a lot of the pattern, and then the spark and the pastel overall gives them a lighter color. I'm new to the spark gene, so I haven't worked with it a whole lot. And he is my very first spark, so I have to do a little bit more research about it before I get him up to breeding size to see what genes spark goes well with. I think it's more of like a lighter gene in the ball pythons as like a pastel or a fire gene would be. But I have to do more research on it because I'm not 100% sure, but he was probably one of my favorite pickups of the past year. Now this girl we produced, she is just a lesser clown. And she's not the nicest girl either. She's one of my nippy girls. Usually ball pythons aren't that bad, but she is definitely one of my more like nippy girls. But this is just a lesser clown. We produce a lot of lesser Enchi clowns. What Enchi does is it takes away a lot of the patterning from the side, but I honestly really like the regular lesser clowns without the Enchi because you can't see any of the patterning or any of the shading on the side because the Enchi cleans it up. Now, breeding wise, it's good to have, but I love the look of the regular lesser clowns on their own. This is one of my favorite ones that we produced this past year as well. And I didn't know we were going to produce her. Or I knew we were going to produce her, but I didn't know what she was going to look like. So this is what's called a super phantom. And she wasn't this dark when she hatched out. She's actually gotten way darker than when she first hatched out. So she was a pairing from a purple passion to a purple passion. And a purple passion is a Mojave phantom, which is what makes a super phantom. Now, purple passions and super phantoms, when they hatch out, look very much alike. So I wasn't 100% sure what she was going to look like, if I was going to be able to tell them apart, but within a month after they all hatched, I could definitely tell her apart because the purple passions are more of a purpley light color, as to where she's just gray all the way around. And I'm excited to see what she looks like as an adult because she just keeps getting darker.
So when you said the purple when they're babies?
Yeah, so all of the babies were purple passions. We got some blue-eye leucistics in it because it was Mojave to Mojave, which is part of the blue-eye leucistic complex. And then the super phantoms, which when I looked up pictures, they basically look just alike. Now I knew as they got older, they looked different. So that's why I waited about a month until I actually labeled her what she was, so I could see the difference and try to tell her apart. And it was very obvious. And she was actually the only one I produced out of about 15 babies, when I should have produced more, but she was the only one that I got.
Now, are they sexually dimorphic, so you can tell the difference in them right now?
On the ball pythons? No, a lot of people try to look at the spurs because I know, I think with boas, a lot of the times you can tell based off of the spurs. But with the ball pythons, there's not much of a difference in them other than size. Now, once they get to be adults, females will pretty much always get 4 foot. But when it comes to the males, they typically stay smaller, but what I've noticed is the males can still range in size a lot. I have a 6-year-old male that's only 2 foot and is a very small boy, and I have a 2-year-old male that's over 3 foot. So they will typically stay smaller, but the males can still range in size. But what I was going to say about my Western hognose is we breed some Western hognose. We don't do a whole lot. The ones that we do work with are lavenders and toffee bellies and coccyx. Our most popular ones are probably the lavenders because they are like a purple color, and that's what a lot of people seem to be looking for at the moment. It's pink and purple and lilac snakes. But with the leucistic hognose, they're in all white with black eyes, and I believe the state had seized them and put them into a breeding program in a zoo, and they had just started to release the snakes to the public, for the public to buy for private breeding. So when we bought ours back in 2020, I spent $7,500 on my male.
Wow.
And I bought a female 100% het, so she was just the normal coloration, but she carried the gene. And I spent $2,500 on her. Originally, I was just gonna get 2 visual hets for $5,000, but I said, screw it, I'm gonna get the visual male for $7,500. So I get him, I grow them up for 2 years. The female took about 2 years to get up. And then my male, he had been with a couple other females, and we ended up getting 1 clutch from him of normals, 100% het for the leucistic. But on my birthday this past year, in May of 2022, we decided this is going to be the first time we're going to put our male in with our female. So we put them in together. I'd say they were probably there together for maybe 15 to 20 minutes. My dad had just moved them in. He does some cleaning in the shed, which is where we have them. He comes back inside to get a drink, goes back out, and then he looks in the cage to see if they're breeding. Well, he looks in there, and the male's gone. And he's like, "Come help me, like, look for the snake. Like, we need to find it." He's like, and I was like, "Did you leave the cage open?" He's like, "No." And I'm like, "Well, if he's not in there, he obviously has to be somewhere in here." Well, my female had eaten the male. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, my most expensive snake I've ever bought, that was worth more than my car, just decided, and she's never done that, ever. She wasn't an aggressive
She will
feeder.
never have a chance again, I hope.
Oh. We put her in with a male this year that it was just like, I think it was a hypo, it was like a $400 snake, and we supervised it this time. She had no interest in him at all. Like, nothing. She was never an aggressive feeder, and when we do put them together, oftentimes with the king snakes, milk snakes, and the hognose, we often feed them, the females, twice before they go in with a male, just in case there is that chance, because king snakes are very well known for it, to like keep them more on the full side. But just this one day, she was in a mood, I guess, or she was just extra hungry, and they are sexually dimorphic, and there's a difference in size. So the males are considerably smaller than the females. And yep, that was what happened on my birthday last year.